SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae is returning record amounts of money to Mississippians, whether it's through the College and Career Savings Program or the hundreds of millions in unclaimed money awaiting your claim. Treasurer David McRae says get your applications and claims in today. Treasury.ms.gov.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
A little rain moving into the area later on today and through early Thursday evening. A possibility of some bad weather, too, right? Rhino, we got a risk of stormy weather, hail, wind, even tornadoes, dang it.
Oh, yeah, just a wide swath right across the middle of the Magnolia State.
Yeah, mostly from our position here in the central part of the state and also to our south. But looking at the radar now, it's all north of us at this point. But we will remain vigilant, of course. And that's supposed to kick on in while we're in here in the Element Wealth Studio. We'll be watching it. Stocks are rallying this morning on optimism that there will be a deal with Iran. The president, he announced that yesterday to the world that it looks like they want to do a deal. That's what he's saying. And he says that he hit them with an ultimatum. He says they want to make progress toward ending the war. He pauses Project Freedom after less than 48 hours, citing progress on Iran negotiations. However, he did come out and say bombing could resume with, quote, much higher, end quote, intensity if Iran does not agree to terms. So it sounds to me like the chess playing is still going on. This is what he said this morning, quote, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be, in all caps, open to all, including Iran. However, if they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. However, thus far, the president has never acted on those threats. And it's hard to really understand all the nuances of the deal-making and the back-and-forth rhetoric. We will see. The White House says they're expecting gas prices to plummet as the president works to conclude war with Iran. That is what White House spokeswoman Taylor Rogers told Fox News this morning. Gas prices should, quote, plummet. I got to tell you, it depends on your definition of plummet. I don't quite see them pulling back to where they were pre-war anytime soon. I think we may see, and that's when the price of oil was sitting at around $60 to $65 a barrel, and That's something we check out virtually every day and share with you on the show. And it seems like every day, Rhino, it was just stuck in that range for months, right? I think it maybe even dipped down in the mid-50s for a couple of days, but it swiftly returned to that $60 to $65 range, kind of sitting there. Now, of course, it's $100, right? But it's down today pretty significantly based on this news that the conflict could come to an end. Your funny money's up $145. It's staying above 80,000. And so traders up there on the corner of Wall and Broad, they're pretty optimistic. The NASDAQ up at this time 354 points. The Dow up over 600 points. So we got ourselves a rally. Yeah, oil down $6.81 today. So it's busted through the $100 a barrel threshold, sitting at $95 a barrel. So that's good news, but that's still considerably higher than it was before the war started, down in that $60 range. Also, Ted Turner, a pioneer of cable television, no doubt, founder of the Cable News Network. I mean, that was really our first experience with the 24-hour news cycle. He's a media maverick, passed away at the age of 87 years old. He was nicknamed the Mouth of the South because he was extremely outspoken, often controversial, it's fair to say. But he built an empire. You can't deny that. Became a philanthropist as well. He died peacefully at the age of 87, born in Ohio. But, of course, he founded CNN in Atlanta. I got to tell you, I think that kind of put Atlanta on the map. Not that it wasn't already, but having that big company headquartered there was a catalyst for significant growth, not just in the media industry, just in general, because this became a global corporation headquartered there. He was also a yachtsman. He founded the United Nations Foundation, and he fought hard to eliminate nuclear weapons in the world. He was also a conservationist. You remember, he was buying up a lot of land for a while to conserve it. And he also reintroduced, I should say, bison to the American West. He was pretty involved in that and was responsible for creating the Captain Planet cartoon because, again, of his conservation bent.
And all the bad guys in that cartoon were just thinly veiled shots at his rivals.
That's exactly right. He was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1991, influencing events, this is what Time said, for influencing the dynamic of events and turning viewers in 150 countries into instant witnesses of history. Truer words have never been spoken with respect to that. I remember vividly when they went live. I believe I was in college in the 70s. He was buying up radio stations and then branched into television in 1970. I think that, was it 75, 76 when CNN was launched? I know the so-called Superstation, remember that, the Turner Network, and they were broadcasting the Braves. Heck, they made Braves fans out of people all over the country that were kind of in the middle of nowhere, didn't have a team. The Superstation, WTBS, and then the 24-hour news channel, CNN, came about after that. Interesting. He was a pioneer.
Yeah, it was like 79 when CNN finally got off the ground.
Yep, I was still up there. Yeah, June 1, 1980 is the date I'm looking at. June 1, 1980. And prior to that, it was Nightline. I think that kind of paved the way for Americans' insatiable appetite for more information, more news than just that daily dose of 30-minute national news network coverage. All the big three off-air networks prior to the introduction of widespread cable. And you get 30 minutes, but during the Iran hostage situation, people wanted more. I mean, I did. I was in college. It's like, what the heck's going on? It was such a huge event. And that's when ABC, to their credit, launched Nightline, Ted Koppel. And you could get another hour. And every broadcast, would... I can't remember if it started or it ended with the announcement of how many days Americans had been in captivity. But that pretty much made the show. That was the impetus for the show, is we just wanted more information. And that's back when guys like Koppel were pure journalists, didn't really offer a lot of opinion, just reported the facts and the data. Most people, I think, would be surprised to find out the great, iconic Walter Cronkite was a pretty liberal-leaning person. But you couldn't tell that watching his broadcast. A little bit, but not the way it is today.
No,
where
not even close.
Remotely close. I mean, he was just a consummate professional, just let me deliver the news, sort of uninfluenced by my personal viewpoints. We're going to take a break right now. We've got Jeremy Nelson, the president of Element Wealth, joining us next in the studio. Paige Hunt, director of tourism for Starkville, is going to come in, call in at 11:05. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're waiting for Jeremy Nelson from Element Wealth. In the meantime, on the C Spire text line, Ted Turner had a nutty wife. No doubt about that. Jane Fonda. Weren't they something? Another text, don't forget his loudmouth wife. She, of course, a big-time protester during the Vietnam era. Really made a fool of herself most of the time, honestly. Did you ever meet him? No, did not. That'd have been cool. I was a young man at the time in his prime, just trying to make some grades and get a job so I could eat more than anything else. That's what I was focused on. Remember Linda Ellerby, and So It Goes. I do. She was good. Yeah. Absolutely. Turner was also responsible for the colorization of many classic films, and created the Classic Network, right?
Which, in response to that, wound up with the Library of Congress starting the national, I forget the name of it now, but there's an entire section of the Library of Congress that is devoted to restoring and preserving classic films. And it was in response to outcry from, I want to say was it Roger Ebert?
Yeah.
That really didn't like Ted Turner colorizing Casablanca and playing it on the air.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't like it, huh?
So that outcry led to the Library of Congress going, you know what? We probably need to preserve some of these in their original forms.
Yeah. Huh. I was not aware of that. But
Turner's life has a lot of weird and wacky things connected to it. Like we were talking about during the break, the Doomsday video.
Yeah.
He famously showed it to reporters from time to time, but it was a tape that he had commissioned of military band playing Nearer My God to Thee, and it was instructed, like written on the side of the tape, hold until End of the World confirmed, and they were planning on playing that if the End of the World came. That was going to be the last thing to air on his networks.
That's kind of weird. Didn't expect that.
I'm pretty sure it's on the internet now. Like I think it's already been digitized, and you can check it out on me. I'll see if I can find it.
That's a little strange. But
and then he bought all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons and the Fleischer films and had the rights to all these different cartoons, and it's like, wait, what am I doing with all these?
Ain't that
Maybe
something?
we should start a whole network. And that's how you got Cartoon Network.
Worked out pretty good. Very creative, no doubt about it. So my wife had a doctor appointment yesterday at a physician that's near St. Dominic's in Jackson. And those of you that are familiar with the St. Dominic's area, very congested traffic area, Lakeland Drive, overpass, I-55. And, of course, you know, Rhino, that exit off 55 to get to Lakeland Drive as you're headed south on 55. Always congested, it seems. But more importantly, it's like a very popular place for the homeless to hang out. You've seen them. I mean, like 3 or 4 usually. I thought that was against the law now. Is it panhandling that's against the law or something? What's that law we passed? It doesn't really matter. Nobody
you
cares.
have to have a permit to
That's what it
panhandle
is. But are we arresting people for that? Probably not. Sounds good, though, doesn't it? It's one of those things. We do a lot of that at the federal and state level. Look at me. I passed these laws. Okay, thanks. So my wife called me this morning and said, I forgot to tell you about what I saw yesterday when I went to the dock there at that intersection where if you get stuck at the light, you're there a while. It's one of those lights that, because there's so much traffic, both sides stay whatever the color is for an extended period of time. You're going to have a long red light, a long green light to get the traffic flowing. Well, she said it's typical to see, like I said, homeless folks there, sometimes even with the old grocery baskets that just to found their way into their hands somehow. Okay, yesterday, one of them had a Benny Thompson sign on it. How about that? So you've probably seen the news. Old Benny says that the prospect of redrawing the congressional districts, which of course would be done in such a way that would make it difficult for him to continue on as a member of the United States House of Representatives, representing the great state of Mississippi, Congressional District 2. He equates it to civil war. What is he talking about exactly? What in the wide world of sports is he talking about? Does it not further prove that if you're a Democrat, that if you're upset about something, it doesn't matter what the policy is, the law, in this case, the prospect of redrawing the districts, the old default card to play is the race one, right? They love to do that. Oh, man. So that's what he says.
Well, in fairness, it's worked for him for the last
Agree.
20 years.
Largely driven by white elitist liberals. They're the ones that drive that narrative more than any. Much more so than the black Democrats do, in my view. But so he says that it's civil war. Is he concerned about losing his little cushy gig? How long has he had that thing? Since 1993. 33 dang years. That's how long he's been there. If there is, in fact, a poster child for term limits, it would be Benny Thompson. He says that the Supreme Court Calais ruling is equivalent to a civil war, not just the idea of redistricting. And so there are calls to redistrict ahead of the midterms. Mississippi is in a particular pickle because we've already had primaries. And I think all the other states that are looking at redrawing their districts have not. And so it remains to be seen whether or not Mississippi acts. I do think the president, especially having been vindicated with his request to redraw districts, vindicated in Ohio and Indiana where he supported candidates who support such a move, that he has perhaps having some talks with our governor. I believe he is. I don't know this for sure. I haven't talked to the governor. But I just bet behind the scenes he is influencing the governor and encourage him to consider including redrawing of our congressional districts. So we got a lot of drawing to do if that is the case. But he's told Al Sharpton, by the way, that under the Voting Rights Act, quote, we were able to craft a district that allowed for a black member of Congress. I just don't get that. I'm going to argue that again. You know, we had a very robust discussion with Representative Robert Johnson. He serves in the Mississippi House as the minority leader, represents counties that are in Benny Thompson's district. And he made the same assertion, essentially, that this idea that black people can only be properly represented by black people. Where did we get there? That sounds racist to me. What am I missing? And that's
because it is racist.
Well, remember the question I asked him.
It's been a socially accepted and excused racism.
Agree. And that also, does it not assume that there are no conservative black people? Does it also assume there are no liberal white people? Well, they got that wrong. And you remember I asked Representative Johnson, do you have any white people in your district?
Well, remember, racism isn't usually rooted in intelligence.
Okay. That's largely true. I don't understand it. Is it not possible for someone who's not black to appeal to the black voters in that district with common sense policy? And then the other question is, well, why do you keep voting for this guy? What the hell has he done for you? The answer is not squat. He's used you to enrich himself and to keep his cushy gig. He is almost the sole exclusive beneficiary of his sitting in office. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com weather.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. SuperTalk Mississippi is hitting the road. Join us live tomorrow from the Pearl River Resort in Philadelphia from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a full day of coverage as we highlight the incredible partnership between the Mississippi Farm Bureau and the Mississippi Food Network through their Farmers Feeding the Hungry initiative. Middays with me in Sports Talk Mississippi will be broadcasting from the heart of Philly. Keep listening to Super Talk Mississippi for a day of inspiration, information, and celebration with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. So, primaries yesterday in Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, and the president's flex, I would say, paid off. The Democrats, however, did win a special election It's pretty clear that the president's influence is still significant in the Republican Party, dominating it. And this perhaps was maybe the most recent big test of that. And that came in Indiana, where he backed primary challenges against 7 Republican state senators who rejected his redistricting plan in December. So you wonder, Rhino, if he might put the same sort of pressure on Mississippi's legislators to redraw the map with respect to congressional districts. Meanwhile, in Michigan, a Democrat comfortably won a state Senate race, for what that's worth, in what's considered a bellwether district in the Great Lakes state. And that's just the latest, really, in what has been a string of rather shocking victories for the Democrats in special elections. In the Buckeye state of Ohio, primaries ended up locking in candidates for 2 major races with national implications. One of those was the race for governor. It's Vivek Ramaswamy, who previously, of course, was a candidate for United States president. He's from Ohio. He's friends with J.D. Vance. He decided to throw his hat in the ring, as they say, for governor. And he ended up winning the Republican primary. Not shocked at that, honestly. Not terribly surprised at that. The money was flowing, as you know, as has been the case. So 7 Republican state senators in Indiana who opposed his plan to help the party gain seats in the House went bye-bye. The groups that aligned with the president spent more than $8.3 million on advertising. That's a bunch of money into races that are typically just low profile, where there's not a lot of money spent, because they're going red no matter what, the way the maps are drawn and just based on historical results. So 5 of the president's challengers won, 1 incumbent won. 7th contest, still outstanding, considered too close to call last night. So I think that the president has sent a message to Republicans across the country that they can get thrown out of office if they detach themselves from him, even as his popularity is down. Polling numbers not looking very good for the president right now, but it shows that he still can be a force in elections for sure. Just looking at these challengers is really incredible. You don't see that very often. Ohio has become more conservative. It used to be that the path to the presidency, it was always said, ran through the Buckeye state, kind of the quintessential purple state, where you had Cuyahoga County. That's where Cleveland is, a densely populated area. You got Cleveland and Cincinnati, but Cuyahoga County. By the way, the Browns, I think they still do play in Cuyahoga County Stadium. I always thought if a Republican presidential candidate could pack Cuyahoga County Stadium, they're going to win the presidency. But in the last few cycles, Ohio has been reliably red. You sort of got I think I got this right, the western side of the state is more conservative and also heavily populated with Catholics. In the eastern part, where Cleveland is, a little different scenario. Always been a purple state. Of late, it's been Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Those have been the states in play. Used to be Ohio, Florida. Who could forget the Hanging Chad election, where it came down to the state of Florida? What was that, 2000? Something like that, I believe.
Yeah. That was Bush Gore.
Yeah. Supreme Court ended up having a rule on the old Hanging Chads. So the state's primary in Ohio was really the big show there. And it's become, like we said, more conservative. Democrats believe their path back to the U.S. Senate runs through the state. They're counting on former Senator Sherrod Brown. What a peach he is. He lost, remember, to Bernie Moreno in the last cycle. Moreno took his place in the U.S. Senate, and then he emerges again. Just further proof these guys are addicted to the drug of politics. Can't stay away from it. Have to keep chasing. Spend their whole dang lives doing it. Brown easily won the nomination. He's going to face off with Republican Senator John Husted. He was appointed last year after J.D. Vance became the vice president. So this is actually a special election to fill the last 2 years of Vice President Vance's term. Interesting. We will see how all that goes. It should be really something. But it's Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he utilized his national name recognition quite effectively. He gained a lot of name recognition when he ran for president. For me personally, I'll have to tell you that I started really paying attention to him. First, he was a regular guest on the Business Channel. He built a very successful business in the biotech industry, young entrepreneur, extremely successful. And then, who could forget the summer of 2020, the summer of love, as Mayor Jenny of Seattle referred to it, while her city was ablaze. Oh, they're just loving each other. But that's when every corporation in America decided to go hire these scam, shakedown DEI consultants, and we're just doing crazy stuff in the boardrooms and adopting policies that made no sense for a private company. It doesn't make any sense for a public entity as well, but especially one whose primary function is to produce societal value and generate a profit from doing so. It's really simple. And he wrote this book that intrigued me. I bought it as soon as I saw it announced, called Nation of Victims. And the other one, I think that even preceded it, was called Woke Inc. Woke, Inc. And it was just a chronicle, if you will, of all the crazy stuff American corporations were doing with respect to the DEI, the CRT era. I call it era because it's died down quite a bit since then, but man, it was front and center in America's boardrooms back then. That was the summer right after the George Floyd situation. And they were trying to outdo each other. We hired DEI consultants. Oh, really? We hired 3. Crazy stuff like that. But he researched it, and this book is great. And it's just chapter after chapter of all these household names of American companies that leaned into this stuff so strongly. It was insane, the crazy, nutty things they were doing. So he did really well. Wasn't surprised. He ignored his rival, Casey Putsch, P-U-T-S-C-H. Really focused his rallies and television ads on the general election because he won the primary easy. Now, the general election is really going to be something. He will face Amy Acton, Ohio's former public health director, who ran unopposed for the Democratic nomination. She was a big figure in the state's COVID-19 response. How about that? So that's kind of what happened in the big primary day yesterday. Coming right back.
People ask me all the time.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You might qualify for some COVID-era IRS refunds. But getting those benefits might be a little bit complicated. So there's a national taxpayer advocate, Aaron Collins, serves with the Taxpayer Advocate Service. And that's an independent organization within the Internal Revenue Service. And so the court's logic in one case shows that the IRS should not have assessed penalties for late filing or payment during the 3.5-year COVID federal disaster period. That's January 20 to May 23. I do recall that. 60 additional days were added to the end date for tax purposes, pushing the period to July 10th, 2023. So you might be entitled to some money if they assess penalties because you didn't pay on time. That includes making estimated payments, and then you may also be entitled to a refund of the interest that began accruing on your outstanding tax liability because they changed the dates. This organization within the IRS has tens of millions of taxpayers, individuals, small businesses, even large corporations. Trusts and estates were assessed penalties and interest during the era, and you may qualify for a refund. Interesting. You can tell if you qualify just by looking at your account, and you can see if interest and penalties were applied, levied. You filed your tax return, the taxes were assessed, as well as all the other payments, penalties, credits associated with the filing. So this person, this advocate, recommends focusing on dates and transaction entries, paying close attention to entries related to tax assessments, payments, penalty assessments, interest charges, account adjustments between 2020, January 20th, 2020, and July 10th, 2023. And so if you're qualified for these rebates, file a claim with the IRS. Interesting. It's Form 843. You can't do it online. You have to print it out and fill it out. Man, I'm a little surprised that the IRS is even telling folks about this, but I'm certainly not upset about it. We don't want the dang government keeping all your money that you're rightfully entitled to. I saw someone locally on social media once again joining in with others who don't want any more data centers, and they want wide open spaces and family-owned farms and the like. I want that as well. So we have 31 million acres in the state of Mississippi. Thus far, the 7 data centers consume about 5,000 acres. It's a fraction of a percent. So I guess I would ask the same question, or this question of these folks. Should we not build roads and bridges and schools and hospitals and shopping centers and neighborhoods and, I don't know, places to eat, places to live?
You'll get one of two responses. Either an affirmative that, yes, we need to eat granola and live in communes and sleep under the stars, or you'll get a blank stare because they haven't actually thought it through. They're just regurgitating talking points that make them feel important or special.
That's what I'm afraid of. Now, the good news is, as you know, we are blessed in this country with way more land than people live on. I mean, we still haven't even touched a fraction of it, honestly. Tons of wide open space. And a lot of that's because we choose to live in the urban areas. Most of our population is all crammed into a small amount of space, leaving the rest of it wide open. That's absolutely true here in the state of Mississippi, except we don't really have any urban areas to speak of. Not relative to, larger type population centers. But again, I think this is a situation where there can be harmony and they can coexist. This is critical to our national security, to our economic posterity. We just have to be responsible, ethical, safe. We can do it. Can't just say no. By the way, quit using data centers to blast data centers. Coming right back after Fox News Super Talk News. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Paige Hunt, Director of Tourism with the Greater Starkville Development Partnership. Hey, Paige, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So give us an update from Visit Starkville and the Development Partnership. What's going on?
Well, it is the perfect week for me to be on your show, Gerard, because it's National Travel and Tourism Week. And so this is the week where we tout not only the fun things that visitors get to do, but the economic impact. And the most recent data that we have from our state tourism office at Visit Mississippi is that visitors spent $197.9 million in Oktibbeha County. So that's real business and real economic impact. And so this week we celebrate and champion our tourism partners, from hotels and restaurants to, the street department, utilities, sanitation. Visitors want the same things residents do.
Sure.
So we are very excited to talk about the increase in visitors in Starkville.
That is awesome. So, Paige, got to ask you, are you concerned about the elevated price of gas and travel, how that might impact visitors and tourism in general?
Sure. We always worry about the cost of transportation. One of Mississippi's great benefits as a travel destination is that we are primarily a drive market. And we're a close drive market. So we are hopeful that visitors understand the value they receive when they get into our destinations. And I think Starkville's visitors do realize that, because 52.6% of our visitors in the last 6 months have been repeat visitors. So when you have a community that has strong repeat visitation, your visitors tend to be another avenue to promote you. They're almost an arm of our tourism department. But we do get, anytime gas is hovering around that $4 mark, it makes people nervous. And everybody has to make decisions, and travel is not necessarily a necessity in the leisure market. But we also have the Mill Conference Center, and business travel has remained strong and growing in Starkville.
Good. So what are the attractions that folks like to take in when they come to Starkville?
So there's so many. I can't talk about tourism in Starkville without talking about this past month in April. We had a lot of events that brings people to town. We had a crawfish boil on Main Street. We had the 40th annual Cotton District Arts Festival. We had the world's largest weenie dog race with the Starkville Derby.
Yeah.
We had Zach Bryan, national country music touring artist at Davis Wade this past weekend. So those sorts of things bring people to town for special events. But I don't know if you or your listeners, you probably know, Gerard, you're pretty smart, that Mississippi State is home to the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library. So there is a presidential library right here in Starkville.
Well aware of that. It's really cool.
Yeah, one of only 6 at a university in the entire nation. So you can learn, and adjacent to the Grant Presidential Library is the Frank and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana. So those are two wonderful museums. In addition, we get a lot of visitors that like coming to the Cotton District, one of our great neighborhoods in Starkville that's chock full of restaurants and bars. And then it's part of our downtown district to come on downtown, where we have more retail and more restaurants. So our main street's undergoing a revitalization, beautification process right now. I'm looking out the front door of our office, and the sidewalks are being widened and furniture being added to encourage folks to stay longer while they're in downtown. So I definitely think those are big draws for us.
So of course,
and Mississippi State University. We can't talk about.
I was just about to ask that question. So you're of course the home to a major university, Mississippi State University, and how much, Paige, is that a draw from a tourism perspective, where you've got a town and a university that are pretty much integrated?
Oh, absolutely. As Mississippi State goes, Starkville goes. We love baseball season. We love football season. We love basketball season. And that's definitely a boon to our economy. Mississippi State holding all 25 of the attendance records for the NCAA is all the evidence you need about the passion of our Bulldog baseball faithful. And I think it's one of the reasons that we got named for the third year in a row as the best small town in the South by USA Today. So football season is always busy. Basketball season brings folks in, baseball season, softball. We've hosted the NCAA first round tennis tournaments here. So definitely Mississippi State athletics is our number one attractor for sure.
Yeah. And of course, you're just around the corner here from the baseball regionals, potentially super regionals for Mississippi State as well. And the attendance has been strong this year. I got lots of friends, that are regulars and have seats and suites and all that sort of stuff. But it's been strong, and you sort of get additional weekends, right, when you make it to the post game or the postseason like that.
Oh, absolutely. We can definitely see the economic impact in the month of June when we host a regional and hopefully a super regional after that. June also brings Mississippi State incoming students. Mississippi State hosts all of their orientation events. So yes, we pull for the Bulldogs because we want them to win, but we pull for the Bulldogs because a regional in Starkville is just great for business. Yeah. And ultimately, Gerard, that is what tourism is it's business. It is the welcome mat for our communities. Everything starts with a visit. An economic development project isn't going to locate in your area without visiting it first.
Yeah. You talked earlier about, Paige, about the Cotton District. What a cool area and what a cool development that is.
Yes, absolutely. It's such a live, work, play area. Students can live there. There's apartments, there's restaurants. It's very walkable. You can walk from, we'd like to say from Lee Hall to City Hall is a mile. Yeah. But I think what's really going to be even more impactful for the Cotton District is we have a fantastic new development, the Crossroads District. And the first phase of that is the Hotel Madelon. It is a Marriott Tribute level hotel that, for your listeners who are familiar with where the Comfort Suites, Russell Inn Suites was, that's where it's going to be. But the orientation is going to change. So instead of facing Russell Street, the entrance to the hotel is going to face University Drive. So I think it's really going to pull that. It's really going to be a great connector and pull that campus traffic in with the city traffic, because it's right after you cross over onto University Drive from campus. So we're thrilled about that project. And it's really going to change the footprint of how visitors and residents interact and exist in Starkville.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Super cool. So any other events, Paige, you want to tell us about that are coming up in the future?
Absolutely. So we just got named the best farmers market in Mississippi by Mississippi Magazine. So every Saturday from now through October, you can come to the Starkville farmers market on your weekend in Starkville. We'll obviously be busy this month with MSU commencement. And we'll be doing some music. We have a downtown summer music series. As you well know, it's America's 250th birthday this year. So we've got some fun things like that. And then Cornerstone Sports Complex, which is our youth baseball and softball facility. They've got lots of tournaments scheduled. So it will be a busy summer in Starkville.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and that's when most folks are, of course, out and about enjoying themselves on vacations and the like. And so are you promoting the Visit Starkville and the Greater Starkville Development Partnership? Are you promoting the area to tourists outside of the state of Mississippi?
Oh, absolutely. That is really one of the main goals and focuses of Visit Starkville, is to be the destination marketing organization, essentially.
Sure.
So we invest heavily in marketing, and we know that it's working because we saw, I want to get the number right, so I'm looking at it. Our lodging sector saw a 22% increase in revenue year over year, and our digital marketing campaign saw 1.1 million impressions in the last 6 months. So,
wow.
And that generated a little over 760,000 engaged sessions on our website. Because impressions are them seeing it, but what we really want is for them to visit the website,
Sure.
which is starkville.org for all your listeners to check out all the things to see and do.
Well, that's really awesome. So sounds like you guys got it going on. You got the university is thriving, and we're fortunate in Mississippi. We got about 30 seconds left, but our universities are really kind of bucking the national trend. They're all doing well. Enrollment is up. They're thriving. They're flourishing, and not quite as well in other parts of the country. Maybe we got a secret sauce here in Mississippi, huh?
I think it speaks to the leadership at Mississippi State University and their commitment to working closely with the city of Starkville.
It's
we have
awesome.
a great town and gown relationship.
Agree.
And we appreciate them so much.
Paige, thanks for coming on. Paige Hunt, Director of Tourism for the Greater Starkville Development Partnership, has been our guest on Middays. Thanks a lot, Paige. See you again.
Thank you.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
At Carter Jewelers,
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
this is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So we were talking earlier about the results in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan primaries yesterday. Certainly looking good for the president's plan for states to redraw their districts. He supported some challengers to incumbents that were resistant to that idea, and they prevailed. I was talking about in the state legislatures. So all that was good stuff for the possibility of redrawing the maps in those states. And then we got the state of Mississippi. Thus far, nobody has said that I'm aware of in the state of Mississippi that there is any plan at this point to redraw our congressional maps. I think a lot of people would like to see that happen. They're tired of Benny Thompson representing a portion of the Magnolia State in Washington. He hasn't been very effective, in my view, and it's amazing that people keep sending him there, 33 years to be exact. But if there's any question as to whether or not the Democrat Party has leaned even further to the left, look no further than Democratic candidate Graham Plattner. He is running for U.S. Senate, and he just lost his primary competitor, which is good for him, and that was Maine Governor Janet Mills. She suspended her campaign last week based on polls that said she was really trailing her rival. So Plattner's rise is just the latest example of these really far-left candidates in the Democrat Party. And during a period where we've got President Trump in office, but during that period we've seen Zoran Mamdani. He kind of, I guess, broke the ice a little bit there. He's a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist. He defeated Andrew Cuomo in the race for mayor of the Big Apple last year, and he has governed consistent with who he told us he was, as a far-left wacko nutcase. But this guy, Plattner, is really something. It's now been revealed that he had Nazi symbol tattooed on his body.
Yeah, the SS skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
I believe it's called the Totenkopf.
Yeah, which is, if there is such a thing, maybe a little bit more evil than the swastika. I don't know. They're kind of in there, depending on whose version you believe of what it stands for.
The argument for the Totenkopf being more evil than the swastika comes down to the fact that the swastika was a stolen mystical symbol from the East.
Yeah.
That is still used to this day to mean something completely different in Japanese. I believe it's manji. Whereas the Totenkopf was designed to emulate the darkest aspects of Roman military culture and was worn by SS soldiers, including those guarding concentration camps.
Okay, got you. A nutcase, though. This Plattner guy is. And so he's trying
the nutcases are the ones defending him, saying, well, he didn't know what it was. You got something tattooed on you didn't know what it was?
Yeah. Now, he would be facing Republican Senator from Maine, Susan Collins, in the general. Now, a lot of people stay upset at Collins because she often breaks with Republicans. She is a lot more moderate than she is conservative, and there have been some key votes. And remember, she had to be talked off the ledge to get on board with, I can't remember if it was Gorsuch, one of those guys that Trump appointed in his first term. And she was a pretty solid no, but then she changed her.
Kavanaugh.
I think it was Kavanaugh. I think you're right. Yeah, and then she changed her mind after the testimony, after the hearing that he conducted, and she questioned him, and she didn't write it. But actually, I do recall the statement made when she announced she was changing her vote. It was well done. Again, that's her staffers that write that stuff. She may or may not even have read it and approved it before it got out there.
Just look at any committee meeting and look at how many of them are just reading off a page that they've been handed.
So true.
And you listen to them read it, and you can tell they're reading it for the very first time.
100%. Stumble through it. Schumer may be the worst. He never looks up. You think you've been there long enough where you kind of figured out how you can read and ahead, maybe commit to memory some of the lines there, look up and engage with people and speak, and then glance briefly down. That's how you're taught to do it, right? Not just with your head down staring, talking the whole time.
But then you run the risk of saying something that hasn't been pre-approved by the 14 people that had to make sure what you're saying isn't going to offend someone.
You're right. They're wordsmith extraordinaires, aren't they, when it comes to that? So this Plattner has outraised Collins in the first quarter of this key race. But Susan Collins, she's in her sixth term. She's got a significant nest egg already to her credit. So she brought in just $3 million. She had $10 million when she started. And that's, if you want to know why incumbents have such an advantage of getting reelected, it's because while they're in office, they're able to raise money not for necessarily a race around the corner. It's just because they're in office, and the lobbyists in particular want to make sure that they have access, that they're considered in good, favorable status, and they're going to write the checks. It happens here in the state, too. You know that. It's the same deal, that while they're in office, they have a decided advantage because they're able to raise money from their office, not as a candidate. But then when they say, oh, look, I got all this money, I'm going to run for the next office. That's exactly what happens. So you end up with career politicians. And if someone from the outside wants to challenge, they better have access to money. Personally, usually the case, because they're behind right off the bat. That's why incumbents or those who just move from one office to the next, again, have this financial advantage. And that's the case here. So this Plattner guy's got $4.1 million he raised in this quarter. He raised $4.6 in the prior, so he's about $5 million behind her. But he's just getting started. So what that tells me is that there's some people likely outside of the state of Maine that feel like he has a chance to beat her. Now, how old is she, Rhino? She's got to be 83, 84, something like that. Been there a long dang time. Has Susan Collins, as we talked about.
73.
73? Well, she's younger than I thought. No disrespect, but she looks older than 73. So she's in her 6th term. So help me do the math here. She's been in the Senate 6 terms, 32 years out of her 73 on the earth. Gee whiz. Man, oh man. But this Plattner guy is a loon. And if I'm not mistaken, hasn't he kind of called himself a communist at some point?
He's said a lot of wild things.
He says nobody works hard enough to justify being a billionaire, which illustrates the complete lack of understanding of how markets work. That's what makes people billionaires. It's markets, meaning consumers value what it is you create. You'll have to explain this over and over again. I know I'm preaching to the choir to you here and all our listeners, but I get so frustrated when I see this. How can you be so stupid as to not understand that? The market does not reward hard work. It rewards value, period. Now, if you're like most of us mortals, you got to work hard to create something of value. They seem to overlook that. We're taking a break, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From theseabrook.com.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Once again, we thank you for joining us today. The stock market's looking good for you. Your money's looking good. The Dow, it's trimmed its gains slightly, but still a big rally going on at the corner of Wall and Broad, up 525. The NASDAQ has increased its gains up to about 379. What's really incredible is the gains being posted by AMD, NVIDIA, and also Micron, chip makers. AMD is up 16% today, $57 a share. It's Advanced Micro Devices. I did see a market analyst today say that he thinks the semiconductor industry is getting a bit frothy, and he expects a 50% pullback. I don't see it. I really don't. But that's what this particular market analyst, who is obviously a successful one, says. But, this is what makes the markets. Man, oh, man. So we were talking earlier about this crazy person that's running for U.S. Senate in Maine, this Plattner guy, and this idea that billionaires didn't work hard enough. Therefore, that's the point he's trying to make. Therefore, they shouldn't be billionaires, which is just crazy. And again, ignores reality. And what they don't realize is that their goal, their plan, his specific, explicit statement was nobody works hard enough to justify being a billionaire. According to whom? You loser? I should point out this individual served in America's Armed Forces, and I think it is appropriate to thank him for his service. But somewhere along the line,
it's also his service that he blames for why he got a Nazi tattoo.
That's exactly right. We explain that to the folks. Did he give any color on that? I've seen that as well.
His claim was that there was an outsized portion of the soldier population that agreed with Nazi ideology.
Oh, okay. Well, he's an oyster farmer and a Marine Corps veteran, but he says he's fighting oligarchy. He's right in there with the far left wing of the Democrat Party. But once again, this lack of understanding of how markets work, and really what you're saying here, Mr. Plattner, is that government control of the economy produces superior outcomes than markets do. Now, I know there's some out there that are saying, well, Gerard, we really don't have free markets. And they're pointing to what is overstretch of government power into our markets. And I agree. It's still way more so than anywhere else, in my view. Still more opportunity. Still better. It's flawed. It ain't perfect. And yeah, I do think there's government overreach that has resulted in stopping short of pure markets. But for the most part, it's way more market-oriented than it is government, talking about the economic system in this country. Certainly relative to other countries that have embraced the idea of more socialism, more central planning, more government.
That's the only silver lining on the dark cloud that is government incompetence and speed of, or lack of speed of anything in government.
Yeah.
Is that markets can innovate faster than government can regulate.
That's exactly right. They can't keep up with it, especially the sort of innovation that's occurring today and the continuous shortening of cycle times of creation of new goods and services. We just invent stuff faster than the government can keep up with it. An example is what's happening is this explosion of artificial intelligence, and now there's some concerns. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology has a standard subcommittee that is going to review new large language models before they are made public. I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I can tell you this, I'd rather it be this group within NIST than the Congress, than just some crazy rogue nutcase agency out there. I feel a little better about when you look at the composition of this group, they know what they're doing. We do need some sort of reasonable protections and guardrails, but not such that they impede innovation. And I think this group understands that. But again, I'm going to read you this. This is from this Graham Plattner guy just yesterday, talking about Delta Airlines. They're cutting snack and beverage services on flights under 350 miles starting May 19th. Okay. So what? Well, this crazy person, Plattner, says Delta can afford to pay their CEO $27 million, but a complimentary water bottle is where they draw the line. Which, again, is just further evidence that they don't know what in the heck they're talking about. They just don't. And the CEO making $27 million is absolute peanuts. It's less than petty cash and has nothing to do with the change in this policy. Airlines are struggling. They don't make a lot of money. They are especially struggling with the price of fuel going through the roof, to the point where if they passed all those additional costs on to consumers, they wouldn't have any passengers. People would say, man, I can't pay that. Just wouldn't fly. So it's a problem. But here's the thing. You don't like the fact that Delta won't give you a water on flights under 350 miles? How many of those could there be? I mean, let's be honest. By the time you get up and get to cruising altitude, which is usually 15 minutes or so, it's a 350-mile flight, and it's 15, 20 minutes for descension into the airport to your destination. I think the bigger problem is just logistics, just getting that out there. So really not a big deal there, Graham. If you don't like it, don't fly Delta.
According to reporting on AOL.com, Delta Airlines operates around 5,500 daily flights.
Okay.
About 450 of those daily flights are under 350 miles.
Less than 10%. Okay. Well, it's common sense, right? I know it's a little second-order thinking there. He didn't quite plug that into his equation. So I'm telling you, 350 miles in an airplane that's going 500 knots per hour, by the time you get up, get level, get down, and depending on the size of the flight and the aircraft being used, you can't get to everybody. You really can't. I've seen that before, right in the middle of, I'm sorry, folks, fasten seatbelt signs on, we've just started our descent, we're going to have to discontinue cabin service. It ain't, who cares? I mean, how long is a 350-minute flight, 350-mile flight? 30 minutes, maybe? Man, oh man. Hour? How far is it from here to Atlanta? Everybody flies that route out of here. That's an hour flight, 55-minute flight. And that's what, 500, 600 miles? I'm thinking 350 would be like Birmingham. That's maybe it's probably a little shorter than that, but
a flight to Jackson, from Jackson to Atlanta, is just over 350 miles.
Okay. So, I mean, you barely can do, and I've seen it where they won't do the regular cabin, but they'll do first class. Right? And they said, sorry, this flight's so short, can't do it. You can't do without a water for that period of time. I mean, it's just, and it's because of the CEO's salary, that's why. Oh, my gosh. Oh, man. But I know that to a lot of folks, it's popular. Yeah, the CEO, I want some water. Take the money away from them. How many people do you think can run an airline? That number of people is fewer than the number who can hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. That's how many. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
And I called Maybelline at the top of the hill. Maybelline, why can't you be true? Oh, Maybelline, why can't you be true? You done started back doing the things you used to do.
belly up of Mississippi.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, so in the last segment, I just simply asked how old Susan Collins was, and I did that because she's been there 6 terms, 32 years. Now, let me be clear. I would way rather have her than, and this has always been the problem in a state like Maine where you have this kind of anomaly in Susan Collins being a Republican for what's pretty much a blue state. Now, they've had some spots of Republican leadership, governor, in the past. I get that.
Wouldn't 6 terms be 36 years?
Did I miscalculate it? Yeah, 36 years. 6 of 6, 36. Right. Yeah. Okay. I just misspoke. 32. So 36 years, and she's 73. So actually, that's where I got the number from. I was thinking her being 73, it being half of it at 72. That's where I got. So, all right, she's been there half her life. Is the point. And she's running again. This will be her 7th term. She wins. She lives to, God bless her, hope she does. Don't want anything to happen to her. 43 years. I do that math right there.
I think it's 42.
42 years. 6-year terms, 42 years. I've got confused with her age being 73. So, here's the deal, though. I just happened to ask the question, how old was she? Mainly because when you see that somebody's been there 6 terms, 36 years, you think, well, they got to be 80. But they're not. She's not. She started at a relatively young age, in her early 30s there, running for Senate. I just haven't asked a question. That's all. And also, she does physically just looks a little older. So we have somebody on the C Spire text line that clearly is not a fan of the president, shall we say. And also needs to learn how to write the English language as well. It says, y'all dumbass wannabe president is knocking 80. What difference does it make? Well, the first thing I would say is this is his 2nd term, not his second 4-year term, not his 6th going for 7 6-year term. That's the first thing I'd say. Secondly is I really judge a person based on their mental acuity and their physical health. And the president, even though he's knocking on 80, doesn't comport himself like an 80-year-old. Compare him to Biden, who was the same age, right, when he was in office. Biden looked significantly older and conducted himself like he was significantly older, always not knowing which way to go and barely able to put one foot in front of the other, shoulders hunched over, unable to conduct a press conference without a note telling him every word to say and who to call on. Completely different. Put those two side by side. This president acts 20 years younger than he did. I would say, for his age, he seems more fit mentally and physically than Susan Collins does. And he's roughly 7 years older. So that's the difference. And you get a lot more respect if you write the English language properly. Am I being unfair there?
No.
Why have we allowed people to bastardize the language like that? Isn't there something to be said for that?
Because a significant portion of the population draws some sort of perverse pleasure from being as dumb as a bag of hammers.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. But that's it. So I'll say again that it's not a matter of the physical age as much as it is their ability to function mentally and physically. And the last guy we had clearly didn't measure up to that. Now we've seen all sorts of reports where they went out of their way to hide it, right? And the media was complicit in that as well, in a big way. And now there's some leaks around that, even from these big media outlets where people have kind of moved on and are comfortable talking about that, disclosing that fact. Yeah, so, 6 Senate terms, 36 years, and Susie Collins. But again, let me be clear. I may even send her some money. She's orders of magnitude better than this nutcase, younger individual that is running as a Democrat, but is a self-avowed socialist that we've now learned had a Nazi tattoo imprinted on his body. And there's pictures of it, right, of him with his shirt off showing, was it on his chest?
He's also the kind of guy that gets down to his underwear at a wedding and sings for everybody. So
saw that as well. Yeah. Time for Fox News, SuperTalk News, coming right back.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays on this hump day. Mo says, since the SCOTUS has ruled race cannot be the sole reason to draw district lines, couldn't the court that ordered Mississippi to redraw the Supreme Court districts revoke that order? Well, that's an interesting legal question there, Mose. I'm honestly not sure if that's the case or not. And I'm not sure what the standard of proof is, what the guidelines are to prove that an electoral district has been drawn where race was a key factor. I'm honestly not sure how they go about determining that. It's only because it seems, it would, to the naked eye, you look at it, yeah, clearly they gerrymandered it for that purpose. But it seems a bit subjective, is all I'm saying. And, if you end up drawing a district to achieve a certain BVAP, that's the black voting age population, the fact that that's even a thing indicates that we have injected race into the drawing of districts, right?
And that'll likely be the linchpin in any lawsuit brought to challenge any districts being drawn on the basis of race.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So I have seen proposed maps for the state of Mississippi's congressional districts. I don't feel comfortable disclosing the identity of the person. Not that there's anything nefarious. I just don't feel like they would want their name publicized. But this is somebody that's actually working with our legislature and working with Washington as well on this matter. And I've seen it. And it's interesting, Rhino. It shows our 4 congressional districts, none of which have a BVAP north of 50%. Unlike Congressional District 2, I don't know what it is, but it's way on up there, right? Benny Thompson's current district. And again, I just want to appeal to any of the African Americans in our state that may be tuned in that I hope you would consider voting in your interest, for sure. Everybody should. Consider that your interests aren't necessarily best served by someone of the same race. And that is what has empowered Benny Thompson for a long time. We could improve on that. And I don't think, this is the other thing that I've gotten into some lively debate on. Do you think that people have different needs in the idea that you need something from government? I have issues with that to start with, right? Just fundamentally that, no, that's not their role. It's to serve your needs. However, there is a role for government, and I don't see that the needs and the role of government differs based on race. What do people want? I started thinking about this. Well, first of all, they want to be safe. I think that's pretty fundamental. No safety, no life. They want government to make sure that their life, their loved ones, their property is protected. I think that's pretty fundamental. They want access to, again, the necessities of life. If it's a family, you want to make sure your children can get a good education. Now, the problem is, Rhino, is that evolves into this rather complex debate of what that looks like. So the Democrats would say, we need more money for public education. Folks like me and you say, no, we need choice. It's what we need, right? And that doesn't mean we need to slight appropriate funding for education. And I qualify that with the adjective appropriate because you could spend a lot of money on things that really don't benefit education. So that's one area. They want access to health care. They want that to be affordable. And again, the left would tell you, well, that's why we need this program and that program, right? And we would say, no, we need government out of it. But the need is the same, or the desire. Or let's put it this way. What makes for a high quality of life? You're safe. You're healthy. Your children can be educated. You have good transportation infrastructure. I would say that though you have economic opportunity, the government doesn't come in with confiscatory tax policy. They don't interfere with your life through burdensome nutcase regulations. Don't we all want that? Isn't that common to everyone? Is it like, oh no, that doesn't work for the black people. Low taxes don't, only white people. Is that what we're saying? Feels like it, because has Benny Thompson or virtually every other Democrat, have they ever met a tax they didn't like? And you would hope and think that those who represent us on the right push back on taxes. And I think you'd have to admit we've done a pretty good job of that in Mississippi. Now, we could sit here and get into the weeds about all kinds of other reforms. That's fine. I welcome that. We should. Absolutely.
The reason I shrugged when you said they'd never seen a tax they don't like is because, well, it's not entirely true. If we were to implement something like a flat tax,
well, that's true,
or a consumption tax in any shape, form, or fashion, they're going to scream bloody murder that it's negatively impacting the lower income populations.
You're right. Well, let me perhaps restate that. They've never seen a tax they didn't like that's consistent with our traditional method of taxation in this country, which is highly progressive, meaning the more you make, the way more you pay, right? They've never seen a tax they didn't like. I saw Ro Khanna on the Business Channel this morning. He was on with Maria, and of course he's the one that is one of the co-authors of this $25 minimum wage legislation. Federal minimum wage is $7.25 now, so you'll know. $25 is what he wants to implement. Think of how that would change things in this country, and including here in the state of Mississippi. So she asked him about this wealth tax that California is considering. Now, understand that Ro Khanna represents Silicon Valley, which is home to a bunch of really wealthy people, a bunch of young wealthy people. And he cited some figure this morning, Rhino, about the amount of public companies' market cap in his district. It's mind-boggling. It's multiple trillions. Because several of these multi-trillion-dollar market cap companies, that's where they're based. They're headquartered in his district. And she asked him, are you concerned about the exodus of wealthy people out of California? He never answered that question. He would not answer that question, and I was disappointed that she didn't press him on it. He went around the world bragging, and that's fine, about the large number of very wealthy, very astute public technology companies in his backyard. It's amazing when you think about all them being concentrated in one congressperson's district. And I haven't looked up who all's there because the region is kind of large, but it's where Apple and NVIDIA and Oracle, they're all there. That's where they all started. And still going on, and he happens to represent many of them. But he wouldn't answer that question because you're seeing more and more of these very affluent, very successful people say, okay, enough. You're not going to just stick this 5% wealth tax on me where I got to go calculate my assets and my net worth and send you a check. You think property tax is bad? Think about that. If there's any such thing as double taxation, how could that not be? You paid income tax on the income that you used to acquire those additional assets and wealth. Now you got to pay on that? Man, oh man. So we're trying to get him on this program. I'd like to talk to him about the minimum wage that he's advocating for, and I would also like the opportunity to quiz him about the wealth tax and the concerns that may drive people out of his district and his state. He didn't really answer the question. I know you're shocked that something so thorny was sidestepped like that, right? Man, oh man. But this Graham Plattner guy, I'm afraid that you're going to see more and more Democrat candidates with the same sort of ideology and value systems that he has. And, of course, he's blasting Susan Collins, his opponent in the general, the Republican from Maine. He says, she is on the side of the billionaire class. I'm on the side of the rest of us who built this country. Coming right back.
Do the mess around. Yeah, do the mess around. Everybody's doing the mess around.
At Carter Jewelers.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge.
Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Young boy at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive, but now I'm a man.
Even though it's a couple of years away, a little more than a couple of years,
I want you to believe me, baby.
the prospective Democrat candidates for president, of course, Governor Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Rahm Emanuel. He was a congressman that became chief of staff. His brother Zeke is essentially the architect of the Affordable Care Act. Became chief of staff, of course, for President Obama. But it's Kamala Harris topping the list in all the polls. Topping the list. Incredible. I hope that she will run in that respect. She tops the polls, she wins the nomination. That'd be good. She's got 22%, Newsom 21%, Pete Buttigieg at 12%, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also included in this poll, this survey, 10%. Really incredible. She would, of course, have the backing of Bernie Sanders as well. So, all right. So, what were you telling me on the break again? To share that with the folks.
About.
I can't remember because we had a couple of conversations on the break, but on the last two breaks, I know about the BLM chart that you've sent me, which not surprising whatsoever. Tell the folks about that one, sort of how that shook out.
Oh, it's been going around on social media. It's a chart or a graph purported to be from Black Lives Matter, and it's talking about how 87% of the population is made up of whites and Asians and Hispanics and natives, and how they account for 48% of all violent crimes in America. And it's just like, what is the point of this graph? What is the point of this chart? And why does it keep making the rounds? Or were we talking about the aliens?
Right.
Because Kash Patel said that all the files have been delivered to be disseminated regarding UFOs.
Unbelievable. The Democrats in California, the gubernatorial candidates, had a rather lively debate. That crazy loon, Katie Porter, supporting illegal migrant health care. The state of California has found that their budget doesn't allow them to cover illegals the way they did. Now, just to clarify, a lot of folks believe that the federal Medicaid program covers illegals. It does not, never has. Not saying that some don't slip through the cracks, but the big swath of immigrants covered are actually that are not documented, meaning they're not legal. They're documented immigrants that are eligible. They're undocumented, meaning they're not here legally, that are not. But the state of California and some other states, Illinois, New York, created a program within their Medicaid program where they pay, the state, no federal. But the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as you recall, said, hey, look, states, if you keep doing that, we're going to cut the amount we federal government pay for the expansion coverage group. Unfortunately, I don't think the penalty was stiff enough. It was from 90% the federal government pays. That's the way it was enacted in 2010 in Obamacare for the expansion coverage group, down to 80. That's the punishment. What they should have done is reduced it to 50 or nothing. But so California said, you know what, we're going to have to crack down on this. We don't have enough money. Imagine that. Since we're losing this 90 to 80, plus they just got budgetary problems. And so this nutcase, Katie Porter, wants to restore that and cover illegals in that program, restore it to its prior state. And, of course, she's going to fund it with higher taxes on the wealthy.
But she's running as a single mom, hoping people forget that the reason she's a single mom is because her husband divorced her because she repeatedly beat him.
That's right.
Poured boiling mashed potatoes on his head.
I want to say we passed that on when she announced her candidacy, remember, because that made the news splash when she announced as a candidate. And there's a couple of really interesting videos of her as well that I recall us sharing.
Speaking of interesting videos, was another thing we talked about off the air, but need to bring it on the air. What is it with European women and their form of protest being to go topless?
That's what it was. That's what it was you shared with me on the break.
Because there's a video coming out from the Austrian pavilion of the Venice Biennale where an artist named Florentina Holzinger has set up a big, I think it's a bronze bell, where she herself is the clacker. So she stripped down to her underwear, topless, climbed up into the giant bronze bell, and began swinging back and forth to ring the bell with her own body, hoping to raise awareness of climate change.
Unbelievable. And you thought that splashing paint on the Mona Lisa would do it, right?
But being honest, I'd rather it be a topless woman in a bell than paint on art.
That's true. Casey on the C Spire text line says, we already have double taxation, property taxes, sales taxes. Yeah, you could make a case for that. I agree. I don't know why, and I don't like those either, Casey. I agree with you. I don't like that in addition to an income tax. Let's put it that way. But, man, there's something that really upsets me about your wealth being taxed. How much you got? Okay, well, pay us some money on that. That's insane, especially given that most of those assets that comprise even a wealthy person's wealth are not liquid. Even Mark Cuban has said before, yeah, if they impose something like that, I'd have to sell assets. And you know who gets hurt? Us little people who own the same assets. That the second order thinking here, he's pointed that out. Oh, man, what an idiot. On the C-Spire text line, I hope she does run as a front runner, talking about Kamala Harris. And I hope Rubio runs for president. He would be my pick. You know, he's really upped his game. I agree. When he ran, remember the president famously calling him, or maybe infamously calling him, Little Marco. I think he has done a heck of a job as Secretary of State. And he spoke yesterday. I can't remember where it was, Brian, but it was really well done. It actually included some rap lyrics in his speech. And turns out he's a pretty big musical guy as well. Was at a wedding, I think, recently, where he took over for spinning the records there for the DJ. Took over the DJ duties. I said spinning records because that's what we used to do. But I agree. I think he's done real well. You know, that speech he gave in Munich, I thought was great. Of course, somebody writes the speeches for him, but it's about how it's delivered.
Well,
right.
The funniest part of him DJing the party is it plays into, which I think he's cognizant of and aware of, the meme where he gets dressed up in just about every uniform you could think of for just about any job.
Yeah.
And it's now his duty. It's his responsibility.
Good point. Yeah.
So it's like when the news came out that Cuba was having problems and they were likely going to have to come to the table and talk to America, you had pictures of Marco Rubio in a Cuban military uniform. When the Ayatollah was killed, you had Marco Rubio in an Ayatollah outfit. It's like now he's the new Ayatollah of Iran. He's all over the place.
Yeah. I think he'd be good too. I agree. Let's see what else. Gerard, in your years as a pilot, this has been from Madison, did you ever see anything you couldn't explain while flying? I didn't, Ben, and I know there are reports of pilots seeing such unidentified objects, and you were telling me on the break as well. Is it Kash Patel that's now said that, hey,
Kash Patel said the files have been delivered for distribution.
Wow. I can't wait. I think there's a lot of inexplicable stuff. I do. Now, whether or not that'll say that they're definitely aliens. Now, you were telling me about some of the conspiracy theories. To share that with the folks. I laughed about this.
Yeah, apparently a group of, I guess the nicest way to put it would be, quote-unquote, Christian influencers were apparently gathered together at a house somewhere and purportedly given a talking to by somebody from the government that they need to prepare their congregations for groundbreaking news when the disclosure of UFOs come out. It just doesn't seem like the federal government, if they really were doing that, talked to anybody of consequence within the Christian faith.
Oh, my gosh. We got 30 minutes remaining of middays today. Stay with us.
From theseabrook.com. Days with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
The local rock group down the street is trying hard to learn their song. Serenade the weekend squire who just came out to mow his lawn.
That's Mickey Dolenz, the drummer. Well, at least he played a drummer in the band The Monkees. Pleasant Valley Sunday, referring to Pleasant Valley, California. When was that? 66, 67, something like that? That's when they were at the height of their popularity. Somewhere in that time frame.
Summer of 67.
All right. Missed it by a year there. Cool.
Came out on the album Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited.
Blake in the Delta says, they always get my attention when they protest that way. Talking about the topless bell ringer there, huh? That's cool. Thomas in Greenwood says, what about the Epstein files? Where are they? No idea. I don't know what's going to happen with that. It doesn't seem to be moving too swiftly.
Everything that could be released was released.
I sort of did, too.
It just didn't meet the narrative that had been built in a vacuum since the public learned about them.
There are some rumors, at least, that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick may be called up to the Capitol for some testimony regarding his name appearing in the Epstein files like 230 times or something to that effect. We'll see. I mean, some believe that should that happen and there's some exposure that doesn't look good from the president's perspective, there may be a change in the works. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't heard much about that. We were talking about improper use of the English language, both in written and in verbal communications. We had such a written text on our text line earlier in the day that we read to you. Dan in Hattiesburg says, I get so tired of seeing finna on Facebook. I'm pretty sure a lot of people think that's a legitimate word. Back in 2013, this is on the C Spire text line, the corporation that I worked for at that time had a longtime senator come and speak to our office. His age was advanced. I think he was also suffering from some sort of cognitive decline, maybe Parkinson's, but he wouldn't have been able to function without the 3 aides that came with him. And when he was done and they were leading him away, many other people in the office commented that he was too old, that they certainly would not be voting for him. Yeah, and like I said, it's case by case. Some people just age better than others. I think the president clearly doesn't lean on aides or an inner circle. He doesn't have to have all this whispering going on and notes in front of him when he's communicating. He'll stand out at the Pebble Beach area just off the west wing there as he's headed to Marine One to head to Andrews Air Force Base to board Air Force One. That's typically when that occurs, and the press ambush him. And he'll stand there and take questions for a long time. And he doesn't discriminate. He takes all the questions from all the reporters. Sometimes they ask questions he doesn't like, and he lets them know that. But he will engage. You have to give him that. And I think that's because, honestly, he wasn't a career politician that was told countless times relentlessly by his staff, oh, don't do this, blah, blah, right? He doesn't think like that. He just thinks like normal people, like, okay, I'm the president. People want to know what I think, what I have to say about certain issues. The press's job is to ask questions. My job is to answer them. End of story. I don't need a bunch of filtering and guiding from an army of people. And yeah, and by the way, this text we just read about relying on the aides and so forth, it's that aspect of political office, what I call the trappings, the spoils, that retains people, that incentivizes them and factors into them staying for such a long time. They get so accustomed to that lifestyle that the rest of us,
hand and foot.
Yeah, the rest of us don't have that. We don't have somebody that takes care of. Remember Hillary Clinton saying, I hadn't driven a car in 30 years, for example. Now, I understand a certain part of that is security. But there's a lot of it, as you say, and you made the point earlier, that they're all packed with notes, storyboards, and they're constantly got their head on it. Very few that can just stand up and just deliver a speech or even argue, honestly, in a debate without having a bunch of dang notes done by somebody else. I get that you could rely on them for research. I understand that. But there are just very few people that can just stand on their own 2 feet. That they do the question. By the way, they do the questions, and the people they're questioning have to do that, but not them. Rarely. And you could say, well, maybe they do in debates, but I think they kind of know what to expect. It's going to be asked. In the case of in the last cycle, was it Hillary? I think that it was later learned that they were being fed the questions by the media, wasn't it, when she was debating Trump, that she had access to the
That was
questions?
the accusation, yeah. I don't think there ever really came any concrete evidence out of that, but that was the accusation.
It certainly appeared to be that way, potentially. No doubt. JW in Sunrise says, my dad is rolling in his grave. Him having been a Marine, he always said how one can be a Democrat, call themselves a Marine, talking about this individual running for U.S. Senate in Maine, an ex-Marine. But not only is he a Democrat, he's a far-left nutcase. No doubt about that. And I did look at, just got curious, looked at some of his various policy positions, and they're sort of what you would expect. He is kind of off the chart. He supports universal health care, universal education. So that word universal, it sounds so noble, so virtuous. It's socialism is what it is. It's government-controlled health care. I fixed it for him. Government-controlled education. A tax code designed, get this, to reclaim the wealth for the working class. Notice that word he uses, reclaim. Like, does he think the working class transferred wealth to people who have it? They do. That's the problem. He opposes the acquisition of land by private equity firms and corporations, believing it should be owned by those who live and work on it. No corporate ownership of land. He criticizes endless wars. He focuses on this really, I think, tells you where he stands on the political spectrum. Focuses on building power through grassroots organizing rather than relying on traditional political maneuvering. He says he's anti-establishment, and he has been scrutinized and criticized because in the past some of his online posts have been angry, and some people have pointed out that what he said after his military service was really inappropriate. So he supports gun ownership rights, and he's been critical of the Democrat Party on that, which is a little surprising. Interesting. On the C Spire text line, my dad is 83 and was a pharmacist for 48 of those years. He has been retired for over a decade now, and he still remembers everything as far as I can tell. He remembers all kinds of things from the past, but the last couple of years, he has become much more forgetful on where he put things, but could quote the periodic table. Thanks for sharing that. Look, this is what I mean when I say it's case-by-case basis. We all age differently, both physically and mentally. And so I think you have to take it case by case. And I just happen to use the president, contrasted him to Joe Biden, who were close to being in the same age. Certainly the president is Biden's age when he was in office right now for some of that period. So I'll never forget when the Easter Bunny had to rescue Biden, says Jeff in Carrollton. That was a great scene. There should be an age limit for president on the C Spire text line. And what should that age limit be, do you believe?
They said 70.
Oh, really? So you believe that Trump is incapable of serving as an effective president and carrying out the job function because of his age? He's 79, headed to 80, I believe. I disagree with that. We're coming right back with the final segment on Middays after this break.
At Key Constructors,
covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
2, 3, 4.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. So, you know, the state of Washington, let's see, they just implemented a wealth tax. Was it a wealth tax? No, it's an income tax. Income tax. They have a referendum coming up that would implement a wealth tax. But it looks like there's a problem with the referendum, as in might not happen. The state of Washington is one of the 9 states that does not have an income tax, and they just implemented one on all income over $1 million. I think it's 9.9%. But they've also got a referendum coming up that I think the court said you can't do. They have a wealth tax referendum. I'm just kind of putting that out there because we've been talking about that a little bit today. And this was a ruling that came down from the Supreme Court a couple of days ago.
The referendum would have been to overturn the new income tax.
Okay. Well, I missed it. But isn't there a wealth tax referendum also at play? Maybe that's good to go. So
I only see reporting on the referendum to repeal the new income tax.
Okay.
That would impose a 9.9% tax on annual incomes over $1 million.
That's happened. So you're right. There's a conservative group that challenged it. And the Supreme Court has ruled against them, right? Is what I
says
said.
The state constitution allows laws to be protected from referendum campaigns if those laws support state government.
Okay. So this referendum would have challenged what just passed in the legislature. And the Supreme Court blocks this challenge. I don't know where I thought that they also had an upcoming referendum on implementing a wealth tax, but it's only an income tax only. 9.9% income tax on all income. Speaking of taxes, the data center discussion is one that also has a tax component. And this is kind of hot off the press. You know, Loudoun County, Virginia, sort of considered the area of the country is not considered. It is the area of the country with the largest concentration of data centers. And it was really one of the first. So because of this massive amount of property taxes being paid by the data centers, guess what the Loudoun County government has done? Reduced taxes. This is what I've been calling for in Madison County. You've heard me say it. Let's get rid of or significantly reduce the property taxes in Madison County, given the massive amount of money Amazon is going to pay in property taxes to the county, the school district, and the city of Ridgeland, city of Canton. So they lowered in Loudoun County, the Board of Supervisors lowered the real property tax rate every year from 1.145 to 0.805. That's essentially 80 cents and $1.15 and 80 cents respectively per $100 in assessed value for tax year 2025. That's the way millage works. That's the term that describes property tax rates. So, just looking at a chart here, it's incredible. So the top 10 taxpayers in that county are all data center operators. Every one of them. Microsoft, Equinix. There's a couple of private equity groups that own data centers. Digital Loudoun is one of them. NTT Global Data Centers, Amazon Data Centers. They're the ones that's paying all the property taxes. So the government had the good sense to reduce property taxes on everybody else. That's what we want to do here. You want your property taxes lower? This is how you do it. You bring in investment in lots of property that is eligible, is subject to property taxes. And that's what's happening. So the top 10 taxpayers in that county are all data center operators. And I'm just looking at the amount of investment they have. Honestly, Rhino, their assessed value, of course, you got to understand the assessed value is a percentage of the total amount of investment. But Amazon in Madison County, you got Compass over in Lauderdale, Avio and Rankin, they're in the same leagues. Not as many of them, but there's also not as many people in the county. So this is an opportunity, I think, to make some change. By the way, Kevin Wilson, you know him. He ran for Congress, Congressional District 2. He was defeated by Ron Eller on the Republican ticket. He just announced at lunch he's running for state auditor. We're going to be in Philadelphia tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.